Well,
Man, feels good.
honestly, I still don't feel that the reality is fully set in. I feel I'm sort of at my capacity to be amazed,
Mhm.
but yeah, it feels wonderful.
Yeah. How's it been with like the
Yeah.
reception? I mean, Disco Elysium has been so very beloved by so many people, like critically and just popularly.
I mean, it continues to be unreal every time someone uh, someone talks about it. I mean, like the critical accolades are great. The like popular attention is great. Um, for me personally, the part that is still most rewarding is like when you just meet somebody in person who's played the game and their eyes kind of like light up and they tell you a story about like what the game meant to them. Or I'll tell you my favorite thing to do for a while was to like kind of trawl through Twitter and just see like what screen caps of dialogue people were like posting. That's actually like an incredible ego trip and like a kind of great source of like inspiration as well.
I have kind of missed out on that. I don't have Twitter, and most people that I know, at least back home, actually haven't played Disco. But just reading forums, yeah, it's the feedback has been amazing.
Yeah.
I have to say it, although I knew in the middle of making Disco that we are making at least minimum 9 out of 10 game. But to honestly see it manifest like that, it still feels a bit unreal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely true. Like a lot of us, like I came onto the project a little bit later, but even in that kind of rough half finished state, it was like clear that we were working on something beautiful and special. But like I don't know, like people make beautiful special things all the time that like don't get the recognition that they ought to.
Yeah.
And so you like I don't think any of us dared to imagine like how big the response was going to be. Um, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I have to say that sort of coming from an Eastern European competitive like dog eat dog environment, just the amount of goodwill and a lack of this kind of petty little envy that this reception has had is very surprising to me. I almost never see that. Whenever I see someone doing something great, there is always like a bunch of little dudes somewhere saying, this isn't nothing. This will never amount to anything.
Tell me a little bit about your individual contributions to Disco Elysium. I mean, writing is a challenging collaborative process, I'm sure, but are there specific parts of Disco Elysium that you feel very connected to, or that you specifically feel like you own a little bit, or anything like that?
That is okay. This is a very good question. Of course, there are parts like that, but kind of I guess like the unique thing about writing this guy is that if on this level of collaboration, it just feels wrong to take ownership later on because like kind of the way the writing process works, at least back when we started with Disco, is that everyone started out with a character and or a scene, wrote it to a certain extent. Then other people whose characters or scenes interlapped with it came and wrote another layer on top. Then there was like an editing layer. Maybe sometimes even after that, we went back to the drawing board. For example, like I think I rewrote Kuno like 20 times throughout the whole making of it. I don't know if there is there anyone out there who remembers like the first iteration of Kuno, like the from the bills we took to the first trade shows, but it was a very different experience, I imagine.
yeah. I mean, I think that's like part of why the game feels so like textured and lived in is because like there are probably still parts of that Kuno in there somewhere, but it's
Yeah.
like part of why it feels so real is that it is like layered in that way. Like I came on originally as an editor. I think I was the first proper editor at the studio, but
Yeah.
then I like quickly became a writer as well. Um, and that process, like it, it could vary so much depending on which part of the game you were working on. Like sometimes it was a matter of like fine tuning the language a little bit or trying to like make a character's voice a little bit like richer. Sometimes it was like finishing something that was like unfinished that everyone thought was done. Sometimes it was like writing stuff that had been that was just kind of like, here's a list of characters or books or whatever that need to be written, like take them and do them. But yeah, I don't know, like Argo said, so much of the beauty of it was that like you could feel like you have like like everyone kind of has their fingers in like many different parts of the game, but I don't think anyone could say that they like this is just their part, and that's like a beautiful part about this project.
Yeah, absolutely true. Like if anything, making Disco Elysium has taught me how small like one person's contribution is, and like you can be the most brilliant person in the world, but if you're not a team player, or if you don't know how to collaborate with other people, this potential will never be realized. Like, I guess it taught us all a little bit about how small we really are.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I feel a little silly for asking, especially given the themes of Disco Elysium. But let me try this a different way. Do you have any parts of Disco Elysium, or any characters or scenes or little stories that are very special to you, or that are like your favorites, or just something that's very close to your heart?
I really love Everett. Like, Everett as a character is a culmination of so many different bosses that I have had in my previous life before I got to writing bosses at the very proletariat jobs. This kind of like a poisonous pleasantness that he has. There were so many real life experiences to draw from for that I do feel more connected to him, I guess, than the other characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really attached to the members of the underground communist reading group that we added for the final cut. They're like, that was partly like my effort to work through a lot of my feelings about being like a younger, more insecure literary person who like was a part of some reading groups of literary magazines and that sort of thing. But I mean, like another special part, like for me, like I tell this story to people sometimes. This is from kind of like when I first started writing for the game. In the Doomed commercial area, you can there's that scene where you're like talking to the radio computer, right? And the radio computer is like in this abandoned video game studio that is like barely a joke. It is like actually just like everyone, I think almost everyone on the team like had a pass at that scene at some point or other. And it's just like where we wrote in our like most where we've like made fun of ourselves and like whatever like decrepit state the production seemed to be in at that moment. And so it kind of became like a repository for all of our like anxieties and bad ideas and that sort of thing. And I like, there's a scene where you're kind of talking with the radio computer about what caused the video game studio to go under. And it was because they had this kind of like stupid idea for like a kind of multiplying combinations of characters that all need voiceover and this sort of thing. And I was like working on that section, and then I thought like, we threw some numbers in here. Like, what would happen if I just like put these numbers into a website that could, multiply very large numbers? And then I just like saw the readout go like, just like row after row of numbers. And I was like, oh man, like I wonder how many dialogue cards this would take up in the game, And so I like just started copying and pasting in there, and it took like 9 or 10 cards. And I was like, this is really stupid. Like, I can't make the player click through 8 or 9 cards of just numbers for like this extraordinarily stupid joke. And so, but I like wrote it in anyway, because I was like, well, I want to see how it looks. And then I was like, man, this is pretty funny. There's no way we're putting this in the game. It's like way too dumb. But I like, like you do when you're working on something like this, I like wrote to one of my colleagues and one of the other writers. And I was like, you're like, I'm not actually putting this is not a serious proposal at all, but like, here's a funny, stupid thing that I did. Like, haha, like, what do you think? And this friend said to me, Justin, this is Zaum. We always do the stupid thing.
Yeah, we always do this
Put
stupid
that,
thing.
we put that in the game, and I think about that all the time. Like, we always do the stupid thing, and that's like
I think
so
this
much
is
of
this
why
is
the game is.
this was one of the incredibly beautiful things about making this naivety of how much you can or what you can really do or what you can allocate time for. That if we had been more professional at that point, I think like a lot of fun stuff would have not happened because with this professionalism, a certain level of cynicism would have come as well. But back then we were very naive. Like any stupid idea, go for it, explore it, see what happens. That's why we have things like where you can. I think it's a sandwich. Yeah, a sandwich that you can turn into a plane and ram it into Kim's mouth till he slaps it out of your hand. And this,
Yeah.
I don't think it would have happened in different circumstances.
Do you
It's
remember how
kind
the
of
sandwich thing came about?
Yes, I do. I had written everything following up to Harry finally getting his hand on the sandwich, and I realized what now? Like what is going to happen? It has to have some kind of a meaningful follow up, and I don't know. From there on, it just went card by card. This is actually a good example of this kind of writing in the flow that I think I experienced for the first time in my writing career, where you don't really know what the next card is gonna say, but you know it's gonna be good and you know it's gonna happen. And the only
Mhm.
thing is, can I write it down fast enough before my mind moves on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I think like sometimes in development, people talk about like the 80-20 rule, that like 80% of your effort goes into like 20% of the work. I think there's like something like that at play in Disco, where like probably 80% of our energies go into like the 20 most obscure percent of like the game's content, where like,
Yeah,
you know, the kind of place where we like get most excited writing is like not the stuff that everyone's going to see, but the stuff that like 2% of players will see. um and like we sometimes talk about like, well, the thing is, it's actually not like, it is from a certain standpoint horrendously inefficient to like put all this effort into content that like 1 or 2% of players will actually encounter.
Mhm.
But the thing is, players like love those moments because they're the bits where it feels like the game like read their mind and is like, you can
Yes,
kind of tell that you're reaching something that like, oh man, like not very many people get to see this moment.
yeah,
And that's like what makes you feel like this is my game now. And if you
absolutely.
put enough of those in the game, like nearly every player is going to have at least a couple of those moments.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
that's those are like gameplay defining or game defining experiences. So like, hell yeah, we're gonna
This
put them in.
this is a lesson that Fallout 2 out of all games taught me when I was, I think, 14 or something like that. I played the shit out of that game. It was like the first proper RPG I played. I played it before the Fallout 1, and after even like on probably like seventh playthrough or something like that, I still found like these little absurd things that even now in retrospect I think like maybe 10% of players saw it, but like coming upon those things, like this is what makes you feel that the game is like truly unique and looking after you. And I think this is also something that wards off this feeling that I have exhausted this experience. I've gotten everything out of it. It always leaves you
Yeah,
feeling like maybe there's another nook I haven't looked into.
that's a really good point, because it also kind of like thwarts the completionist. Like, you can't 100% Disco, like
Exactly.
especially not in like one run. Um, and like so much of we what we like try to do in the game, like in the writing and the narrative design, is like turn off those like gamer brain impulses to like collect everything or like
Hmm.
find everything, or like min max whatever. Like, of course, people all the time like they see a white check, they jump out, they change all their clothes. And like that's fine, that's fun, but like you don't have to do that. The game is still good if you don't.
Yeah. Back in, I think it was '98, a game called Eastern Express, I think it was, came out. That was a point-and-click adventure train murder mystery, but it had this unique mechanic that I think they either used real time or they used like simultaneous event. But the point of it is what constantly when you're playing it, you know that you can't get all of it. You can only get like a certain percentage of it, and that's also like a super cool feeling. It takes so much edge off. It takes this lawn mowing instinct off like
Yeah.
I can't get it down in one go anyway, so I might as well just like chill down and take it at the pace the game comes to me.
Yeah, it's about like opportunity costs, right? And if you
Exactly.
teach the player that, but that shouldn't be like anxiety inducing. Like you can't do everything. You're not going to succeed at everything. You're going to fail lots of red checks and say and do lots of stupid stuff. But like that's great. That's like that makes the game better. And those like the kind of like upside to like opportunity costs in that way is that it makes everything you do feel meaningful because you know like you're getting this and not something else.
So true.
I really want to pick your brain on how all this is even possible, because as you're both saying, there's so much in Disco Elysium. Like you can play it like 5-10 times and not have remotely the same story. And what Argo was talking about earlier really fascinated me too, the idea of not knowing what the next card is going to be and just sort of going with the flow. But I imagine you had to do like some planning, right? Like you probably have some sort of story, like you know how you need it to end in certain ways. Like how much of Disco Elysium was like very careful, meticulous planning, and how much of it was just sort of flowing from card to card.
Honestly, you want to take this, Justin?
I mean, there's a balance to it, right? Like in a way, having like a robust kind of like backbone for the game, like the Disco can like play out many different ways, but like the basic story is always kind of the same. Like there's one answer to the mystery, and like there's not an ending where you like join Everett at the harbor and like overthrow like the existing world order or something. So it is like quite the critical path is like quite linear in a certain way. But kind of like what that does is like having this like robust, relatively straightforward backbone allows us to be like quite extravagant in like every other part of the game. And like it kind of part of why the game works, I think, is like there is a main narrative that was at least like blocked out in a pretty basic way relatively early on, even if it like hadn't been written yet. But then when you get an individual character or an individual like dialogue or scene, like you kind of know one or two things that like need to happen from it, like this piece of information you need to gain, or like this some kind of interaction like needs to happen, and the rest is like I don't know, you figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. In
And
addition, maybe you vector in like what are the possible moods that the player is gonna enter this and have to exit the scene,
totally.
but everything else in between, figure it out.
Yeah, and in a way, like part of what that also means is like when you enter into a dialogue with a character, they don't fit into like a kind of like RPG archetype in certain ways. Like there are obviously people who give you quests, like there are quest givers, there are people that you can buy stuff from, so there are shopkeepers. But by and large, like we wrote characters, like we tried to find like something interesting about everyone that we wrote about. Like we didn't want anyone to be generic or forgettable. And so like that also means like you can't walk up to somebody and immediately know like okay, I just need to like click through this dialogue tree until they give me a task to do, because you're going to miss everything that makes them like interesting. And this is also a little bit about like turning off that like gamer brain or like deprogramming players in a certain way to like get them to say like, don't treat this person like a quest giver or a shopkeeper or like a mini boss or something. Just like treat them like a human and talk to them the way you think your character should like talk to them, and see where it goes. And that also is kind of our writing process. Like we just start and we're like, we have to figure out who this character is. And so part of the journey of like writing and playing the game is like, you know, you the player are just like walking in the footsteps of the writer who also had to figure out what was going on with that character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Talking to them like a human is like, I don't know, that's a really beautiful way to put it. I think especially because a lot of the characters in Disco Elysium, including main character Harry, are kind of loathsome. They're like there's a lot of really awful people, but I think there's like you've done this like very wonderful thing where you have managed to make there be something at least a little bit empathetic about even I think some of the worst characters, like ethically.
Yeah, I think that's the thing in like real life. People are there is no black and white. Even like the worst racist person in the world, they have something about them. They have like one human moment in the evening. They go to bed. Maybe they put their flippers on. They have their tea with two sugars. Like it's not pure evil. Like pure evil doesn't exist, and in the same way, vice versa. Like pure goodness doesn't exist. Like the most noble paladin sometimes has a dirty thought when he sees like a noble woman pass by or something like that. It's
And I would say
kind
like
of navigate those gray areas that I think is that makes writing interesting.
Yeah, and I think like the critical part is like there aren't those details, those human details don't redeem like characters who are like loathsome or like do
Yeah, of course
terrible
not.
things.
Yeah.
But it is about like resisting the urge to like just like neatly dump characters into buckets and say like this person's good, this person's bad. Like I want to be good, so I'm only going to talk to good characters, or like I'm always going to do good things. Like you don't know whether the actions that you're taking are like good or not, or like what the consequences are going to be like down the line. And that's like an interesting challenge, like when you're designing a dialogue or like designing a quest or case or whatever, where you want the player to feel that they have like agency, that like they feel like the things that they are doing make sense to their character, and that the consequences make sense, but they can't be predictable either. And like you can do something that is like feels good, like gives you warm fuzzy feelings in the moment, and then later you're like, oh my god, that was a huge mistake. And like yeah, we don't want like real people are messy. Like Harry is messy. He can be absolutely loathsome, but he can also like really try to like get his act together if you want him to. And that getting comfortable in that messiness and turning off the like that kind of like judging, categorizing part of your brain, that's just like an important thing for like works of art to do, like not just video games, but films, novels, shows, whatever. But those are also the kinds of things that we're drawn to, so it like makes sense that we would want the game to reflect that.
Did you find that especially challenging in Harry's case though? Like, I mean, I'm somebody who tries to be as good as possible in every single game that I play, and I was very drawn to Disco Elysium because I felt like it struck immediately out of the gate a balance between making Harry like clearly a bad person who had done a lot of messed up things, but like just empathetic enough from the start that we were able to hang on to that, right? Like it's hard to put people who want to be good into the shoes of a messy person.
Yeah, but like the rewards for that are really great. If like you come in thinking like I don't thinking like, oh no, Harry, don't say that. Like I don't know. This is why like one of the most like I think in some ways the most important check of the game is the very first red check, where you're coming out of your room and you see Claudia and you like can try to hit on her, and like nearly everyone fails that red check, and they like, make a completely inept pass at her. But that's like an important moment because it's very hard to succeed. So like it kind of like trains you that like, you're not really supposed to pass this moment. It's extremely funny. And so it kind of tells you right away, like, it's like, I'm kind of glad I failed that check because I got to see this thing that I would not have seen had I succeeded. And 3, it kind of like marks Harry right away as like, you fucked up, like right out of the gate. And like, unless you want to reload the game and like respec your character just to pass that check, which like people do, obviously, it like teaches you like right away that like, no, you can like deal with some consequences. That's not that like having failed a check, having done a messy thing, doesn't like invalidate your playthrough.
Honestly, like in just between all of us, I'd say that playing Disco Elysium, playing Harry as a classical RPG protagonist is probably the worst way of playing Disco. I honestly found it the most difficult to write this type of Harry, by the book Harry.
And in a way, that's like I don't think it's the worst way to play Harry, but it was very hard to write, and kind of by design it is hard to pull that off, because like that is a Harry who is like trying to deal with his addictions. Like he's not drinking, he's not taking drugs, but he still has those demons. Like no one, like people are made up of their actions. Like a save game for Disco Elysium is just a list of variables that say, did you do this thing? Did you say this thing? Like that is when we talk about like who your Harry is, like that's what we mean. It's just a record of things that you've done and said. And like that is not a record of the internal feelings that Harry or the player playing as Harry experienced in that game. And like you can be someone who like always did the right thing and still like had complicated, conflicting thoughts about it, or like that those moments where you do like where Harry triumphs, like Harry kicks booze and gets the wasteland of reality thought, like that should feel like you did something really hard, because like this is supposed to be hard for Harry. He's a recovering addict.
Yeah.
A good representation of this is this idea that in the felt dialogue window, all the dialogue options you see are always the thoughts that go through Harry's head on that moment. All of the things you see are there. They are these fleeting thoughts that suddenly cross your mind, and you're very embarrassed about them. You're not going to say them, but they were there.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that was my Harry. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I say, but and like that is like the empowering thing is like you get to choose which of those thoughts that you act on.
Yeah. I mean, that was my Harry. Like I committed from the very beginning. I committed to, okay, I have messed up. I am going to own every single mistake and just apologize profusely. And then the game ripped me over the coals at the end for it. It was a great ending, but it was, this guy's really sorry all the time. We're not sure what's going on. No, what are your Harrys?
What are our Harrys?
Yeah, yours. When you like, what is your, like, I guess the canon
who was your
playthrough for
canonical
Argo?
Harry?
Yeah, for you.
Ultraliberal Apocalypse Cuppa, I think, is my canon Harry. That was my best playthrough.
That's a highly experimental Harry, I think.
highly experimental.
I think I was a boring communist.
What was yours?
Mine?
I mean, you started out. You get the sorry cop pretty early on, but from your like, Harry experience, what other aspects did you develop? Like, what coppa types?
I played last year. I don't remember all of the terminology for it, but I basically focused on trying to. I think I focused on things that allowed me to be more empathetic and intuitive, whichever skills those were. And I tried really hard to make Kim happy. Like that was my goal in everything, was to make Kim happy at all costs, which worked out well for me. It ended up being really beautiful at the end. That was actually what I was going to ask you about next, was writing Kim, because I think Kim is just wildly beloved by everybody who plays this game, and I don't know if you anticipated how much everybody would love Kim.
I did not anticipate it at all, Justin. Did you? Like I did not see how popular Kim is gonna be.
I'm not, and it's like a question of degree, right? Like I'm not surprised that Kim became like became like maybe the most popular character in the game. I'm shocked at how much more popular he became than like everyone else.
But
I
Kim,
mean,
Kim
like,
and Harry, Kim and Harry are unique in a sense that these are truly characters no one even remotely can take ownership for, because they are recurring from scene to scene. So we all always wrote them. With them it was kind of about nailing down the voice, so everyone in the writers team are able to write like Kim or like Harry.
Yeah. I imagine that's like very challenging for characters like Harry and Kim, who are there throughout the whole game, to make them sound like a unified person throughout this long involved thing where they could potentially become very different people by the end.
Yes and no in some ways. Like Kim, part of like why Kim works is like you could just like take a random line of dialogue from the game with like no speaker tag to it, and if it's a Kim line, you'll probably recognize it. Like his way of speaking is so distinct. His like the dryness is always there. The like perfectly like modulated tone. The like way he expresses his irritation. It's sort of like it's like a tuning fork. Like kind of once you've like turned your own like writing instrument to it, like you can always do Kim.
Yeah.
I think Harry is tougher precisely because, like you said, there are many Harrys contained within Harry, and you've got to kind of be able to like to account for all of them. I think like working on any big character is kind of an ongoing conversation where we would ask ourselves all the time, would Harry say this? Like, is this like, you know, I'll say like for my part, like a challenging part writing Harry is like I'm much more self-aware as a writer. Like it's much easier for me to write Kim's voice than Harry's. And I often at the beginning erred by like giving Harry options that were like a little too self-aware or like not sarcastic, but kind of like knowing. Whereas like one of Harry's essential qualities is like a lack of self-awareness and a kind of like enthusiastic lack of self-awareness. But at the same time, he does have moments where he kind of like the way like oblivious people can occasionally be extraordinarily insightful because they're like, wait, this thing, does that really like make sense? And then they like notice things that like normal people don't because they're so oblivious. And the trick, especially for like writing Harry, was like finding those moments where he kind of has like a savant like insight that comes out of being basically an idiot.
Yeah, like one of the challenges I remember with Harry was sort of dialing down the personality a little bit, because like I think every writer writing Harry lines, they have like these crazy moments you wanna put in there, but with every ounce of crazy comes with like a personality attached to it. And ultimately, if you go a little bit too far down the crazy line, then like a regular person doesn't have their dialogue option anymore there. And this kind of same element applies to just the stylization of different dialogue options. So for that reason, it's very rarely that Harry says fuck or swears at all. Like we very quickly noticed that having curses in Harry's lines, it kind of deters some players. It kind of creates the disconnect. Like I wouldn't say it like that, or I wouldn't say it with this intensity.
But one of the ways that you can get in those like intense Harry moments is like one of Harry's characteristics is that he's very persistent and he'll like proceed with a line of thinking or a line of questioning like way past the point where a normal person would get off. And so you can have a dialogue option that starts out like pretty normal or neutral, And then if the player just like keeps pursuing it, we know we can like ratchet it up a little bit, like with each card until like finally like Harry is saying like something completely unhinged, like accusing Garth the cafeteria manager of like having,
Mhm.
killed the hanged man.
Mhm.
Just because just because he asked a very basic question like,
Mhm.
did you have any involvement, sir? And then you can be like, well, did you? Why do you have to die, Gart? Like, like, did you get some sick thrill out of it?
I highly suggest telling Joyce Leighton Messier that Mr. Everett is helping me find my gun. Like,
Mhm.
go explore that option a little bit.
That was
Yeah.
a great branch to write.
Yeah. Which are, some of the ways in which Harry accidentally ends up being kind of a brilliant detective.
Mhm.
Maybe not that line, I don't know, but
Mm.
other ones.
I mean, it's one of those. It's sort of like what we were talking about earlier, with you reward players for going down obscure or unusual paths in their dialogues. Like that's where you
Yeah.
put that kind of like 1 or 2% material in there.
I wanted to sneak in one more Kim question really quick because I can't remember if this is something you all have confirmed or if this is like a fan thing that I read. But Kim has his own like invisible skill tree, doesn't he? Or at least like a kind of headcanon skill tree that you all have that's different from Harry's.
In the background.
Can we confirm this?
I don't know. I feel like people on Reddit know about this. I don't know if it's true.
Oh, interesting. We've had some discussions about what Kim's character sheet would look like, and it may or may not contain some skills that Harry's does not.
Fair enough.
But also these skills may or may not be canonized by some of Saum's projects. Like, if you go looking into it, you might find something interesting about Kim.
On the Atelier website, for example, there might
For
be
example.
clues.
Yeah. Do you have any like advice or tips for aspiring writers, especially those who want to do things that are tabletop like or Disco Elysium like?
Don't be afraid to sound stupid. You have to get stupid ideas out of the way so the good ideas have space to form. And ideas are an infinite resource. Don't think that, oh God, I had a great idea for a novel 5 years ago. I can't tell anyone about it. This must be the thing I'm gonna do. Get that shit out of the door, and the new better ideas will take its place.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think the other thing that I would say is like, especially if you want to write for games and you want to write something that feels disco-like, is that don't forget that like a game is a system that has to that like most people think a mark of a good game is that it's like balanced or symmetrical in like certain ways, but don't be afraid to write things to like not try to appease every kind of player or every reader or whatever equally, because like if you make it so that like every path down your dialogue tree validates like every type of player you're imagining, what you're essentially doing is like you're making all of your paths interchangeable, when like in reality the like interest and drama from like a branching narrative comes from uh, that kind of like feeling like something should be easier for you, something should be harder, like, and that the game or the story itself can have a perspective on your character or on the world or on events or what have you, that you should think about while you're writing.
Also like two more. No one has ever asked me for the steps, so I'm really enthusiastic to share two more. One is like write for yourself, in a sense that that don't try to anticipate what people wanna hear. Write the stuff that you would like to read yourself. Like and the other thing is write about the stuff you know, especially coming from Eastern Europe and living in this first world cultural sphere for a while. I've come to understand the value of so many of those completely mundane experiences back home. That in this like a different context are infinite treasure troves. I have a background in vehicle mechanics, for example. I would have never thought back in Estonia. This is something I could really write about in a fictional sense. But it's just one of those things nowadays I can draw from, and everyone has those things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to second what Argo was just saying about writing for yourself, and also add that like we wrote Disco Elysium for the other people in the studio.
Exactly.
Like those were our first readers, those were our last readers, and like if you can like make someone that you know laugh or like get an emotional response out of them, like it'll probably have that effect on others as well.
Gonna very quickly say one more thing.
Of course.
Don't ever try to intentionally write jokes. Jokes will come, like they will naturally come. Trust that they will come. Life is full of humor. Don't force it.
Yeah, that's extremely good advice.
Are there any other games that you two are playing that have like really strong narratives that you think are good for people to play if they're interested in narrative writing?
Oh yeah,
Kentucky Route Zero.
Ah, yes.
That's yeah, that's the other game that I would be as proud to have written for as Disco, I think.
That's a good one.
On 12th of May, one of our writers, Dora Glinjik, is releasing Choice of Game is releasing her game Currents, that's set in the alternate history and deals with Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. I played it a little bit, and I can recommend that.
War of the Currents is the full title.
War of the Currents, yeah. Very tight narratively driven game.
Cool. Is there where can people look for that?
Play Store and Steam, Google Play Store, I think. Yeah, Steam definitely.
Awesome. Can you say anything about what you're all up to next now that Final Cut's been out there for a year and you're chugging along?
No.
I'm getting into martial arts.
Yeah, that's true.
Fair enough. Well, I hope we haven't seen the last of Zao making neat things in Revachol. I'll hope. We'll keep my fingers crossed.
No, I think we're all excited to explore more stuff in Revachol.
Yeah, because
I'm going to live the rest of my life in Revachol.
Because it did start out as just a tabletop setting that like the group of people was playing, right? And so I assume there's a whole bunch of it that's just sort of in people's heads that we may or may not ever see.
The expression "it's just the tip of an iceberg" has never been more true.
I love that. Justin and Argo, is there anything else that you want to plug or talk about before we wrap up?
Can I say hi to my mom?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you to my mom. Hi, Mom. Thanks for raising me the man I am.
Yes, thanks, Argo's mom.
Thank you, Argo's mom. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for talking to me. Disco Elysium is awesome. Really appreciate it. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy LudoNarraCon.
Thank you so much,
Rebecca. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute
pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.